Hello.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Spotlight. We are featuring super talented guest today, Eric Charles Mokotoff. And we're getting ready to go live on Hairdresser's Advice right now. So stand by for me for just a second as we go live. Here we go. And we are live on Hairdresser's Advice. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to wait a couple minutes and Eric and I are just going to chit chat a little bit here until we start seeing the opportunity for you to come on and join us for today's Spotlight. I'll tell you a little bit about the Spotlight. It's a featured opportunity for anybody that is a beauty agent member talent. So we have all different categories of member talent, and that would include hair, skin, nails, wellness. We have business speakers, so that could include coaches or anybody that just kind of falls into the business atmosphere. And then we also have business resources. So if you're a company and you're looking for a bit of an outreach and you're trying to get your name out there and you're just not maybe ready for any of that big trade or publicity advertising at this point, the Beauty Agent Network might be the answer for you. Next month, we're actually going to be launching a manufacturer category. So if you are a company and you're selling products or services, but your focus is really around education, we'd love to have you join us as well. And of course, you would get a spotlight. So my guest here today is Eric Charles Mokotoff, amazing artist. I've known him for years. He has participated with me at the Beauty Agents and now the transition to the Beauty Agent Network. He's got a lot of good information to share. As you know, my guest last week, Elaine Travis, we talked a lot about color and a lot about what we struggle with in this particular category. And yet this is a category that if you haven't or don't intend to master it every single day, then it's quite possible you may not be making the income that you desire in this industry. So welcome, Charles. Eric Charles.
Eric Charles, yes.
Eric
Thank
Charles.
you, Bonnie.
I'm going to let you do a little intro to everybody while I type the title into our Facebook Live page, okay?
Sure. I hope everybody's doing awesome tonight. I'm really excited to be here. I'm honored. Bonnie and I, like she said, we've been friends for many years. We've had myself and can supply education salons. I like to specialize in salons who see the value of that type of an investment. And I'll also be launching an educational team with the Miracle Fruit Oil product this year, which is new to our industry, which is really a challenge for me, a good challenge, to take a company that has been born out of chemists and dermatologists and enter the field of our industry. So to help somebody navigate that and launch education and create a team is a huge honor, and we're excited to see what we can produce in New York this year.
That is awesome. Well, Eric, I know that you've been at this for 25 plus years. You have a salon now in Florida. Where exactly are you located in Florida?
We're in Palm Beach County in Delray Beach, and we are 5 years into the location that we're at now, and I have a fabulous team. And our vision's always been exactly the name of the salon. It's called Hair Studio Artists, and my vision was always to have a studio of artists. And when I say studio, I mean a salon, because it's not a rental situation. They're all employees, and we work very closely together, and we have an open chair policy and a junior styling team. So we're really, really tight. And last week, we had the most incredible week from hell because the salon got flooded.
Yes.
Oh, my God. It was my kid's first day of school, and I had a few hours to myself before I had to pick my son up. I get a phone call that your salon is flooding. I race over there, and sure enough, the salon is 1 inch underwater, and we were able to remediate it within 48 hours and reopen in 46 hours, because you just can't stay down in this business. You have to stay up 100% of the time.
Yeah. What was the cause of your water? Was it the
Uh,
weather or was it a pipe?
It was a faulty shampoo hose, which was kind of an eye-opener for our industry, and I made a video about it during the week, that we don't have any standards for the equipment that we buy, and we spend a lot of money on these companies, and a lot of the equipment is made overseas, inferior quality, and so to get 5 years on a very high-end hose, I should have gotten 15 years out of that. So without any warning, a hose burst during closed hours and caused a 1-inch flood. And luckily, we were able to bounce back very quickly. We only lost our floors and our baseboards.
Oh, were you in the market for new floors eventually?
I think we're going to keep the concrete because everybody's voting. Keep the concrete. Keep the concrete.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Well, that's always good. I mean, a little harder on your legs and feet and stuff like that, but you can make it look artistic
Yeah,
and
the floors were originally like a gray silver, and since the concrete's the same color, visually there's not much of a difference. And we all have mats. You know, you have to work on a mat. And I've worked in concrete situations without mats, and yes, at the end of the week, a hairdresser's pretty hobbled.
yeah, perfect. Good. All right. So you got that. Well, I'm glad that wasn't any worse than it could have been for you. Let's go back into the little bit of a history. You know, I kind of touch base with everybody in regards to these spotlights and have them share a little bit about themselves back in the day. So can we go back to the little Eric Charles? I mean, I'm always curious, how do you decide to become a hairdresser?
Well, as a child, I was involved in art and music. I was the youngest of three in a middle class conservative Jewish family in Queens, New York. And I was the creative one for sure. Art and music from the age of 6. I played classical guitar. I went to college, got a master's degree in classical guitar, music, and composition. And like any artistic field, it's hard to make a living. My dream was to be a college professor, but unfortunately, you have a long list of people ahead of you that are tenured, and some college professors are teaching well into their 80s. So I needed to shift gears artistically and still do something that would fulfill me inside. And after traveling around the country to find myself, I went back home to New York, and I spoke to a man named David in Brooklyn, who was a very successful salon owner, years ahead of himself. My mother went to that salon, and I went to summer camp with his kids. And so that was how the connection was made, is go talk to David in Brooklyn and see what he can do for you. So 25 years ago, this gentleman had a computer system that was DOS-based. He didn't have a book and pencil. I stood next to him and watched him do color, and everything he taught me came out of a bowl and a brush, and it was Brooklyn. So, you were told, go and get a model. So what did that mean? It meant just walk out the front door of the salon and grab somebody off the streets of Brooklyn and say, would you like to have some free hair color? And that's how I grew in the early days. And after David's salon, I traveled to other salons. And it's no secret when people hear me talk, I did work in 13 salons in the first year because I felt that most salon owners had broken their promises when it came to training, education, and getting behind the chair.
Yeah, you know what? I want to stop you right there, Eric Charles, because that's an interesting thing. You said you worked for 13 salons in the first year. I probably worked for within maybe, I'm going to give myself a 2.5 year span. I probably worked for 7 or 8 in that 2.5 years. And it was the same thing. It was kind of finding a home. It was finding the right fit. It was finding the right type of clients that were, going into that particular salon. It was, learning, trying to figure out how to learn from a team that was, going to be more cohesive to working together. And I want to bring that up because I think a lot of students that are new into the industry in that first 3 years, they get very, very discouraged when they can't keep the job and they feel like they failed and they feel like the industry's failing them because it's not working.
Yeah, there's a lot of promises that are made and a lot of promises that were not kept. I loved Brooklyn and I loved working for David, and although he was years ahead of himself, you do reach a growth point where you have to stretch your wings beyond the nest. So for me, David was that first nest, and with his blessing, he was like, yeah, why don't you go out to Long Island or New York City and get out of Brooklyn and see what the rest of the world has to offer. And so the rest of the world was a little brutal. It wasn't as loving as the nest of, let's say, the David Bradley Salon in Canarsie back in those days. What came out of Brooklyn was some amazing relationships with people like Tony Finelli, who had started the art and fashion group at a time where soirees for our industry were almost unknown.
Yeah.
I eventually found my way through Long Island and into New York City, and then that's when I got recruited by my first manufacturer, which back then was L'Oreal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we've got some people that are on board with us here. We got Marie Natasha Rodriguez and Donna, Matthew. Hey, Matthew, how are you? Good to see you. So we've got some people that are following us. Now, I'm so glad that you shared with me your story that you wanted to be a professor, because now it all makes sense, Eric. Now it makes sense to me. But you know what? I love the fact that you shared that, because your forte and your specialty under your educational umbrella, and obviously how your brand of your salon is a lot of color expertise. And I can see that part of you, that diligent artistic side of you, that musical side of you that makes you a good teacher, but that professor side of you that is incredibly accurate on instruction and the how-to part of it. So certainly that, I'm sure that makes you an amazing, artist and educator in our industry. And I didn't know that about you. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, because when it comes to education, I'm definitely a purist, and my early music career and teaching music throughout my teen years into my early 20s definitely plays into that. But what I bring to the table with education is a world of knowledge beyond a salon that's requesting, let's say, I want to learn a placement, I want to learn how to balayage. I incorporate that musical philosophy in that whatever you learn is like a musical exercise. If you want to learn highlighting or balayage, you've got to learn what I would call the etudes or the studies or the scales. And once your hands and brain can think on all of those levels, then you reach into your pocket of tricks and put it all together to create something for the individual based on the haircut and the head shape. And that's where I feel education has fallen off a little bit, because we get caught up in, I just want to learn this one thing so I can post it and get my likes, but there's so much more that goes into it. And in a digital age, we need to really start to re-embrace hands-on physical kinesthetic education.
Yeah, it's so true. There's something really powerful about that. I recently had kind of a survey done on me, like one of those where you fill out the information and it tells you what you are. And this is nothing new. I mean, I've done this a million times, right? But what was really interesting was that, a good percentage of people are visual. And I imagine a lot of people in our industry are very visual too. Beauty just represents that visual part of how we see things, and then be able to piece it together. But the truth is that those people that are kinesthetic, the ones that can work with their hands, that really is kind of a musical learner. So they need to kind of learn in a different way than a visual person does, or than a kinesthetic person that does, or, than somebody that's more of a thinker in it.
Absolutely. It all feeds into itself. So there's kinesthetic learning, audio learning, visual learning, and a good educator has to be able to combine all three things. What I am trying to get off the ground in 2019 is a presentation skills class, because there's so many talented people out there who are doing education who I feel can benefit from some basic presentation skills on how to communicate and cater to the audio, the visual, and the kinesthetic person.
Yeah, well, I'm doing stages again in 2019, and that will be in Atlanta and in Phoenix. So why don't you come and be a guest with me at one of my events in Atlanta too?
You got it. I love the way that sounds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And stages, although we tap into, because I've been watching your presentation skill tips that you've been putting on Facebook, and they're very good. Stages, we kind of go a little bit deeper into the more of the brand development and helping people to really uncover what what that personal and business brand is. And then once they have a foundation of that, it's easy for them to be more authentic and make that connection with others. But your tips are incredibly powerful and accurate. And I'd love for you to kind of be a co-host with me and talk about some of those tips that you know, because it's always great to be able to hear some great knowledge from other educators in the industry and in the market.
One of the things I enjoy about going to a hair show is I like to sit in on as many classes as possible. And I get asked all the time, why do you do that? Why do you sit in on classes and hear the same thing over and over again? For me, it's not always about the content of the class, but it's the delivery. I want to know what the audience is thinking. I want to see who's getting up, how many people are leaving, how many people are entering. And I do the same thing in my own class. I scan that room and feel the energy of all the people. And I've got to be able to command enough interest and inspiration in what I'm doing on stage so that, as you saw, to maintain 300 plus people standing room only year after year is not an easy thing. It's not about the content of the PowerPoint. It's about how am I keeping their interest for 90 minutes?
Yeah, and 90 minutes goes by really fast, but still, if you're addressing things in too much of an informational way, then it's hard for people to stay connected with you. So you have to be personable. I think that's one of the harder tricks that people don't know about presenting is to really, you got to be a little personable. It can't all be about the education or all be about the technique or the analytical side of the quality of education that you're teaching. And
I chuckle when you say that, because on the inside, I'm really a very shy, introverted person, and I don't like too many social situations. And people that know me know that at these venues, you know, I'm like, okay, dinner's at 6, I'm back at my hotel room between 8 and 9, and I'm going to bed. But it's a different personality that comes out when you're in front of people. And that's the little Eric that goes back to the actor when he was a little boy who, you know, went out for the school plays and the camp shows. So I always loved the stage.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, it's a nice blend. You know, you could be this ambivert or introvert or extrovert, but the truth is that we need all of this in order to kind of up-level the education in our industry. And I know that that's something you're really doing. So specializing in color, specializing and being able to help people to, you know, to master this particular category of color, and not just the techniques, but give us a little bit of insight of the type of education that you do around color. Because I know you've done quite a bit of education with the ABCH color group and event.
Yeah, you know, when I worked for L'Oreal many, many years ago, we were introduced to the concept of ABCH as a career ladder, that an educator who had that certification would be able to climb a higher rung and earn more money. And at the same time, that program was trying to let consumers know that they existed. And over the years, it's morphed into what I would call the greatest weekend of geek color camp. So I went out to ABCH about 7 years ago as a guest, and I looked around and I wrote to Andre and sent him my letter of introduction with my references and said I would love to be part of this. And I've been teaching for 6 years straight, and we've seen this thing grow, because what I'm doing with education is not just teaching a placement, but I'm teaching people the difference between placement and technique. Because if people call up and say, I want a technique class. Well, techniques are your hands, how you physically create, and placements is the dynamics and the geometry of what you're putting into the head, and those two things have to come together. In addition, when I do a class like at a salon, it's a full day seminar. We start at 9 o'clock with a model prep. We do a live demo at 10 o'clock. Then we do a PowerPoint presentation with handouts, which is more seminar theory based. We incorporate a lot of chairside psychology, how to talk to people, how to consult, how to convey the vision back and forth. And then we do a hands-on workshop. But the whole day that we're doing the hands-on, it's not just, okay, you walked away with how to learn, let's say, color melting, but it's how to formulate, read the hair, understand the head shape, the haircut, read the client's body language, find better, more professional verbiage. So it's including a lot of the presentation skills, but from a behind the chair perspective, along with theory, technique, and placement. So it's very, very deep, and it's not for somebody that just wants to insta-learn. It's deep. You got to practice it.
Yeah. I liked Donna's comment here. She says, yes, if they don't like you, they're not going to learn a thing. It's so true. I mean, here we are as humans. We have to be likable, but we also have to be effective. And I think that is a unique balance for educators to have in the industry. Now, Eric, when you're talking about, this placement, and then you're talking about techniques and everything, where do you see the industry? I mean, from especially the last 6 years, because I think Andre was a little ahead of his time. He always had this certification. He's had it been going on for many years. But I think people really then understood that I don't know enough about color to be successful with it or have the confidence that I need. Where do you see it from 6 years ago to today?
It's grown drastically. It went from a few hundred people to 800 people annually. It's growing also in the type of education that's being brought in, and we're seeing that shift of mixing the digital and the social media into, old school ways of learning and really combining it and pushing it forward. I think this past ABCH was one of the most dynamic, and we saw a huge cross-section of beginners through advanced people in our industry. And when I say beginners, like I brought my whole team out there with me this year, and some of them were fresh out of school. And one girl didn't even have her license yet and was exposed to this higher level of thinking and learning and earning. So we're seeing a huge growth, and I think down the road, a lot of people would like to see an ABCH on the East Coast. People have talked about it and whispered about it. I'm 100% for it. I don't know when it will come, but eventually I believe it will as ABCH grows.
Yeah, and ABCH is American Board of Certified Hair Colorists, is that correct?
Yeah, and the manufacturers in the past 6 years, let's do the comparison of 6 years and 6 years, they've pulled away from very in-depth education. So like in my early days of working with L'Oreal and companies like Paul Mitchell and Aveda, the education was very deep, and you had to stand in front of your peers and practice your presentations and get scored. And as manufacturers have cut the education and pushed more towards digital, social media, and visual, we need to go back to some of those roots, but incorporate it into the digital world as well.
Yeah. And there is a difference. There's a difference between presenting live and presenting on camera. There's a different energy and a different level of engagement that you have to be able to create. And I think we're still learning that, that's still a learning curve that we're all in right now. But yeah, so typically the ABCH event is usually in June. It's usually in LA. And so I'm sure that there'll be some dates coming out, unless you know them right now and you want to share those, because I think it is one of those events that people, if they really want to have a better understanding and specialize in color, it makes a lot of sense to go to something that is very color driven. And I know Elaine was a big fan of it as well, and had shared some information about it. And she was very passionate. She's very passionate about people understanding hair color, because based on just what you said, the depth of education being offered by the manufacturers it's kind of hard to come by now.
Well, the manufacturers have really pulled out all the in-depth education and are focused on strictly sales-generated education, mixing, timing, and learning, the latest and greatest, which is great. It's phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, but the deeper, higher level is in dire need. And so I know Elaine very well. We shared a classroom a couple of years ago at the ABCH. I know her style of education. It's very much like myself in that it's rooted in the old ways. Kind of like martial arts, you want to stay old school.
But that's a foundation. We have to still have the foundation because guess what? Lightening hair and putting, vibrant colors on it you could look at, if you had 10 of them in front of you, you would be able to tell which person, based on any of that type of creative hair color, understood hair coloring, understood placement, understood tones, compared to just creating mermaid rainbow hair.
Absolutely. You can go to any online forum, any moment of the day, and see very basic questions being asked. And you can see how many variations of those basic answers are being given. And so the foundations, people are starving for that. And if they can go to a show like ABCH or connect with educators that are out there doing that level of work, it will change their entire color game, because it's not just about what's hot today. What's hot today was hot 20 and 30 and 40 years ago. It's all just rebirthed itself. It's how we spin it and make it new again, and then convey that message to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the term balayage has been around for a long time, but hair painting has been going on for many, many years, and a very European technique. And we're acting like it's a brand new technique. It's not. But there's still a learning curve to all of it, and and obviously that's why you are out there doing your due diligence of being able to help people understand education. And even like Donna said, she's like, amen to the foundation learning. That's her passion. I read this article with Quincy Jones, and he was talking about the music industry, and he was saying how it's shifted so much, and that the musicians today are so technology savvy that the music doesn't have to be the music like it had to be 20 years ago. And I really saw a correlation in our industry of being very similar, like products and technology and, some newness to some techniques and everything is creating this way that we're doing hair and doing services, but it doesn't have a foundation to it anymore. It's hollow. It's empty. It's, there's no grow out. What does most people's haircuts look like a week later if they don't have a good structure to it? What does, hair color look like 10 days later if there's not the right, balance to the formula or the right technique, the right placement of it? Because, you put it on one way, but then they go home and do their hair another way.
Right. And so let's stick with the analogy of music and hair. Especially because I have that musical background. When we were kids, we had to drop a needle on a record and listen to that record hundreds and hundreds of times to be able to pick off the notes and try to play them. Kids today, they can just go to YouTube and see the actual musician say, here's the chord, here's where you strum it. It's a little bit more instantaneous. So yes, today's musicians, their foundation is missing, just like today's young hair colorists, who are, through no fault of their own, they're jumping onto the only avenues that they know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of independent educators that are teaching the visual flash without the backbone and the foundation. So the work is coming up hollow, as you say, for sure.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm glad that you're out there, and people like Donna and Elaine are out there teaching some really good foundational type education and everything. Now, is there some specialty that you do? You said placement and techniques and everything, but is there more of a specialty of what you offer, some of the class titles that you're doing at some of the shows and what you're offering salons for those in-salon programs?
Yeah, on the in-salon level, I've got programs that range from taking, let's say, junior stylists or assistants and apprentices. I have one program for them called The Secrets of Formulation, which really teaches young colorists how to understand all color lines. Because again, if you go to social media, every second of the day, somebody's posting, how should I formulate this? Or
yes.
my client came in with an index card of a formula, but I don't use that color line. How can I translate it? So we have classes based on how to understand universally all color lines so that you never have to get stuck. It's like cooking. If you know what to do with tomato sauce, it doesn't matter what name is on the jar.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the industry and kind of where you see education going. What's been the struggle?
We saw a big surge in independent education in the last few years, and then it kind of nosedived a little bit. And what I mean by that is there's some incredible educators out there who are very successful. They're constantly selling out of their classes. They remain at the top of the game. And then there's this middle section that attempted it the last couple of years. And from my view, I saw a lot of inexperienced educators trying to compete with the same price level as somebody who has that experience. And then you've got myself, who's a little bit older and a little bit of a different train, so to speak. And I'm trying to keep up with that younger, more digital-based crowd, but at the same time get that digital-based crowd to marry back into the foundation. So we're seeing a little bit of a different slope. I know that my focus is now really on that private salon versus the hosted salon, because that's where I'm finding the most success in terms of not just what I'm bringing to education, but the long-term effects of that workshop. So for example, I went to Fort Myers last year. They loved it. They not only saw techniques and placements they were not familiar with, but they were able to get a whole head trip of ways to think on approaching hair. And I'm happy and honored to be going back to them in a couple of months for round 2. So for a salon to re-invite you back is a great honor, because they could pick anybody in terms of, I want a different educator every year for the diversity. But when the salon themselves wants that same person back, you know that you've done something in the message.
Yeah. And I really want to, do a shout out to all of those salons that are still, employee-based salons, or, commissioned or hourly wage or salaried type salons, because their greatest investment that they can make into their team is education. And, people like Eric Charles and everybody that I've highlighted here on the spotlight over the last couple of months, they are all ready to be in your salon to be able to provide that education. And you can't get a better investment than somebody coming in and taking your entire team through some processes, through some foundational learning, through some new techniques, to be able to get some excitement going and increase sales.
Absolutely. Some of the independent education, they'll, I've seen prices anywhere from $300 to $500 for a 4-hour class, and there's no hands-on in some of those classes. And so then the kinesthetic learning is gone, and you're visually just watching somebody do a placement. And some of those educators are unable to speak while doing the work. And so at that level of an investment, 4 hours later, the participants walking away with a limited scope versus an entire 8-hour day, because once you've met them in the morning and they've seen you do some work, and then they've listened to you impart some messages, the intimacy of another 4 hours, which brings you to the midpoint of the day, you still got 4 more hours to go. At the end of an 8-hour day, you've created a very intimate relationship with not only the salon and its employees, but how they work, how they think, how their hands are moving. And it becomes, you start to see the humbling of the participants, where they start to really unravel like a layer of an onion, and they'll come up to you and say, I really didn't know any of these things. Salon owners love to say how experienced their staff is, but as an educator, when you get there, you do find a lot of salons really don't know. And it's not their fault. It's exposure, and we're all products of our environment and our upbringing and our training. And so to see that aha at the end of the day, not just on the physical work, but in their whole way of how they think about the work, that's it for me. That's what makes it.
Yeah. And again, it's really having that an investment of time. Now, I know that it's very expensive to go travel to hair shows. And although hair shows are on the uptick, and educators like you are doing a phenomenal job of educating at these events and shows, it's still a huge cost to bring your whole team to those type of environments. And there's a lot of distractions at those environments, a lot of choices. So I think the best investment salons can make today is to bring in that personalized education. And in a case like with you, Eric, you're an independent educator. You're not getting paid by a brand. So a brand's not sending you in there. So you're really bringing in that quality of education, that foundation of education. And you know what? And I don't, listen, I know what the going rates are for most educators that are independent, and none of it is outrageous. As a matter of fact, I would be saying to them right now, raise your prices, just like we should be saying to salon owners and stylists out there. Raise your prices. The value of education is, has got to start becoming more in alignment with the type of expertise. But you have to weigh those odds, because there is, like you described, a variation of education and educators out there, you know, from younger to more seasoned and experienced, from, you know, people that have big social media followings to people that are just quality educators, and they're not putting their attention into a social media following, but they've been, you know, very successful as an educator.
Yeah, there are a few shows out there that are not paying the independent educators, and we need to see a change in that area for sure. No matter what level the educator is, time away from the salon, time away from family and revenue has to be covered in some capacity, because it's not cheap, like you said, to cover the costs of just one person flying to a location, hotel, car rental, and meals. And then, like what I do with my salon at the shows, we just work for benchmarks. If you've earned a ticket to a show, great, you'll get the ticket. And if you want to work the show, that's a whole nother level. And so we took 2 of our junior stylists to New York and to LA this past year, and we put them to work, and they earned their ticket out there, and it helped to grow my classes and my audience, and they were able to do things that I couldn't do.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like the way that you're bridging the gap and bringing some of these younger people into the type of education that they need in order to be successful. And you're right about the shows. I'm just going to encourage educators, you know, especially educators where your actual product is your education. Now, I know that there's some variances to that. You know, I look at business educators, your product is that you're coaching or that you have online programs. And so a lot of business educators, I understand that there's that gray area in getting paid a fee. But if your education is technical skill sets of color and cutting and, you know, all of those categories in our industry, we should not be doing shows for free.
That's correct.
As an educator, you should be getting paid for your expertise and your time. And I think to educators out there that are jumping on the bandwagon of saying, woohoo, I got booked here, but I'm not getting paid, say no.
You got to say no. But that's separate from those early humble years of working behind the scenes and working your way up to that level.
Yes, absolutely. You got to be
different.
Right, because listen, the shows know who the educators are. They know who are the people that are being followed. They know who the people that are out there doing the thing and making some big things happen in that realm of education. They're aware of it. We just have to be careful that quality educators are not being taken advantage of in this industry, and that they are getting paid for their time at the shows, and to some degree, and it's all going to vary, show to show. And I don't have any opinion on that other than say no to free.
Absolutely.
And, I always say, why, would you let somebody come in and have free services done? Then why are you saying yes to doing free education at these events?
Yeah, even a show in my own state still costs me 2 days out of the salon, travel time, hotels, meals. So no matter how you slice it, it does get very costly.
Right. And here's the difference now. It appears that the independent educator is the desired educator and education that people want. They don't want some of the manufacturer education, because it's kind of, to some degree, it's salesy or showy, or they don't use the product, so they don't want any of the product knowledge incorporated in the education. So the independent educators are on the rise, and there has to be some opportunities for independent educators to continue to be at the shows, because it's really the demand and the desire for people to attend.
You're 100% correct. If you look at all the major hair shows in the past 2 years, the majority of the education, like you said, was independent educators. Mm-hmm. Now, I know which shows pay and which shows don't. I'm not going to name any names, but the ones that don't, that's an awful lot of educators that are out there for free. And I get it, there's some level of exposure. But what's happening with those shows that don't want to pay the independent educators is they're also caving to the manufacturers, who are screaming, too many people are going to a class and we're not spending enough time on the show floor, yet the manufacturers themselves are not stepping up to the classrooms.
Or the manufacturers are not getting the same level of audience participation at the shows to be able to warrant the cost of the education that they're doing.
And the beautiful thing about some of the newer companies is that some of these products are not specifically, let's say, a color line. It could be, let's say, a different category of product that spawns a whole slew of color cutting and presentation and philosophy in a different way. So, for example, again, I'm not going to mention company names, but there's companies that are not color companies and not styling companies, but they're niche companies.
Yeah.
And with niche, they're able to offer education around their product by way of color cutting and business building. And that's very valuable.
It is very valuable. And it's one of the things too that, that I certainly have prided myself on with the Beauty Agent Network, and bringing educators into this network and being able to showcase them a little bit. It's part of the back end training if somebody's just starting out is to be able to teach them, listen, it's fine if you're going to go in and do this show for free because you need the exposure, you want the experience of it, then you have to have that next piece, that next deliverable piece that is an offering. And it might just be, get everybody to follow you on Instagram. That might be the action, and that's okay. If that helps build your following and your repertoire. It might be that you have a webinar coming up, or that you have a CD or something that you're going to be able to sell. Those are things that can powerfully keep that connection alive. And then there's the variables that you can look at. But high quality education should have a high quality price.
Absolutely. So take, for example, this company that I'm working with called Miracle Fruit Oil. It's a reparative oil. It's not a styling oil. So if you think about the delivery of education for a simple product, sure, the class could be over in 10 minutes. Here's how you use the oil and here's what it does. But rather than do that, we're creating a lot around this oil, this technology, and how does that oil then play with hair color and cutting and the philosophy of what we're doing in a salon. So we can build an entire program around one little niche product, and everybody wins across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that there's a lot of new and up and coming companies that need some educational support. And that's another thing that I want to share, because people like Eric are open to working with some of these smaller independent manufacturers that are just starting up. So if you're an educator out there and you're looking to kind of, partner up with a company, but not necessarily be fully represented, or contracted with a company, then these are the opportunities that I also get every day as well, that people want to know, how can you help me with some educators, and how can I get some educators to be able to support me at these shows? Because they know that if they're on the show floor and they're selling their goods, that education helps to reinforce some of that sell-through.
Yeah, I mean, one of your past spotlight guests was talking about, how life after the manufacturer is the independent road, but it's not necessarily exclusive to that. The independent road is open to anybody that doesn't want to contract with a company, that wants to remain independent in their thinking, but bring their skills to the table. And it's a two-way street. Support a product that you believe in, not just do it for the money or the fame, because there's no fame in it. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's hard work. When you read all these educators sitting at airports with canceled flights or missed flights or weather delays, the fame, it wears off quickly. And the glamour, it's hard work.
It is hard work.
It's a two-way street for people to get in and show what they really have to offer. So we have a lot coming up in 2019 that we're working on.
That's really good. And listen, for those of you that are with us and joining us on Facebook here, so, welcome. Hi, Nancy. We got a few more people following us. Donna's been very good at keeping the crowd going here. Thank you, Donna, for that. If you guys have some questions for Eric, definitely let us know. I think is at the role that we both play in the industry here, our goal and our intention is to be able to make sure that education, and this is what I say my intention and mission is for the Beauty Agent Network, is to be able to have education be the #1 selling product in the industry. That people are buying into more education to enhance their skill set, to enhance their, their ability to communicate more effectively, to be able to enhance their paychecks, to be able to enhance their family lifestyles and the lifestyle that they want to have. All of that is based on being highly educated. And this is an industry where you can't just get a little education and then run for 20 years on it. You have to stay educated, and people like Eric are definitely trying to keep us up in there. But what else do you want to share, Eric, that you're noticing out there in the industry and you want to kind of put some highlight on?
Well, there's definitely a lot of movement in employee-based salons. You know, we saw the last couple of years a big mass exodus from traditional salons, but I think soon, not overnight, but soon, within the next year or so, we're going to see it sling back over to the employee-based salon because of this infrastructure we're talking about and these foundations. The schools are pumping out more students now than ever before, and the students are dropping like flies from the schools, and then they're dropping like flies from the salon world because salons are not delivering the education that they should. In turn, they go to YouTube or Insta-famous classes, and they burn out quickly within a year. So we need to slingshot it back. But also, there's a lot of movement at the government level. Anybody that wants any information on apprentice programs, talk to people like Jesse Scatrill, who works with Kim Color, or Kim Hansen. These are people that are working at the legislative level to bring the apprentice program back, which has been federally approved. And there's a lot of rules, and I don't know enough about it, and I'm learning because I want to partake in that. But that's where we're going to start to see employee-based salons grow again, because we're offering something that wasn't done before in the past. And that can lead towards better standardization, better licensing, at a time where so many people are trying to deregulate. And California is changing its rules about salons, and independents, and 1099s in overnight, like, mind-blowing ways.
Yeah, we actually have Paul Berry's going to be coming on soon. I'm not sure that we got the date set up yet, but he's out of California, and he's been in the industry for a long time. He has history. He has lots of history, and he's anxious to get on here because there is a lot that he is aware of that he wants to share, because it all it takes is one state to create a few precedents of changes like this. And there's no time in between before other states start to develop the same policies and things in California. I think that there's a very gray area. I think people don't believe that some of these changes are in effect right now. I think some of them, I've talked with some of my clients, and they're in lawsuits right now based on that. Being able to pay them hourly and sick days and all of that stuff. They're in lawsuits paying back retroactive years to previous employees. And then you have the supposed booth rental is illegal in California conversation. And this doesn't qualify under suites, because as a suite, you are leasing, a room, a building, but a booth rental within an existing environment, salon, that's all open, is supposedly illegal at this point too. So he's going to help us shed some light on some of these things as well, because there is a lot of changes. And, I don't think anybody wants deregulation. I'm sure that that's not where any of us want to go. But boy, we really do have to figure out how to powerfully support all these students that are coming out of school to be able to succeed, because they can't succeed in a suite.
Correct.
1 year out.
Someone like Paul Barry is a legend in this industry. And so when we talk about the history and the foundations, it's really up to Paul and his generation, myself and my generation, to get the message to the younger generation, because let's face it, we're not getting any younger. Not that 51 is old, but if you go back, and we have some educators that are 70 and then pushing 80, when we're gone, we have to leave the history to the next generation. If the history's gone, what's left? And so Paul has been an amazing mentor, friend, and legend in this business for me for 25 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not about having 50,000 plus Instagram followers. That is not the foundation for success in this industry. And, and I think that's another area that's going to change a lot. I mean, I think people will realize, if you have that many followers, and then you're a skilled educator, that's great, because then you have people that want to be educated by you, but that's not how you're building a clientele.
Right. It's two separate things. Like, yes, you want to have, 12,000, 100,000 followers if you're an educator trying to get a message out to an entire nation. But if you're a hairdresser working in anywhere USA, then your audience is any town that your town that you're in. So one of the best social media classes that I took was Nina Kovna's class, because she puts a big emphasis on the amount of followers is really not that important depending on what you're doing. So if you're trying to build a book in a salon,
yeah,
you need to be within your immediate area. If you're in Texas and your followers are in Alaska, it's not going to do you any good.
It doesn't do you any good. And you don't need 50,000 clients. You'd never be able to manage 50,000 clients. So it's kind of a mute point in there. So we want to get back to the truth of education. We want to get back to the foundation of education. We want to make sure that people understand that, a few really good haircuts and some basic color technology and understanding some basic color techniques, that's how you're going to succeed in this industry as you're starting out. And there are plenty of people out there that can support that education. But Eric, you being one of them, and really committing to the educational realm of everything. So I hope that you will definitely let us know what you got going on for 2019. I'll let you know what I got going on for 2019 as well. We'll figure out how to collaborate. We'll be like the music industry, and we'll collaborate.
There you go.
Some opportunities here, because that seems to be a success for them.
We need like a live aid for the industry.
That's
Remember
right.
Live Aid back in the music days? That was
Yes.
like in the 80s. So we need live aid for the hair industry.
Yes. And I like that Donna's had mentioned here on that yes, that there's been a lot of new rulings in California, but it's going to start going across the country. And it's really, it could potentially put you out of business if you don't understand the laws here. So we're going to bring some people on to be able to support us in making sure that information is being shared accurately and in a timely way. So there are some experts out there that are jumping on board with the Beauty Agent Network, and we hope that you'll consider that as well. So if you want to have a spotlight like Eric has today, come and join us as an educator and let people know what you're about. Eric, how would you like to close this out today?
I do want to share one thing that happened this week that was a real big aha for me as an owner, which feeds into a lot of what we were talking about. When the flood occurred in my salon and I realized my staff was out of work for a week, just like myself, if I was running an illegal-based salon, paying everybody the $10.99, they'd have nothing. But because they're legitimate employees with an owner that cares, my insurance is able to cover their lost wages. And you're not going to get that working for a shady salon or being independent. If you're independent and something happens, you're out of work for a week, you're out of work for a week. But the economy of where we're at in our country, nobody can afford to be without money. So I'm really super proud to say that I can take care of my people. And long term, I think people are going to look for that in salons, and salons that can't deliver it, those are the ones that'll go away.
Yeah, agreed. And you know what? Congratulations on being able to share that and be able to take care of your staff, even though it was a horrible circumstance that your salon flooded, but that had to make you feel good that you were able to take care of your folks in that, in that timeline of them not being able to have some income because you are an employee-based salon.
Yeah, and because of that, they couldn't wait to get back to work. We have a lot of relationships in the area with some studios and other salons, and we wanted to save some of the book for the week. So one of our generous friends across town lent us a studio, and so my senior stylist went there for a couple of days, and in the back of my head, I was like, I hope she doesn't get used to studio life and decide she doesn't want to work for us. And after her first day in the studio, she called me up and said, it's so claustrophobic being in a studio. I just want to get back to my team and my family. And that's when I had this flood of emotions. You know, people see me as the outspoken hard-nosed, but I'm really an emotional kind of guy. And that really hit me. And I carried that with me all week long, that through all the hell you go through as a salon owner and firing people and hiring people and training people, what you're left with is a team that's led by somebody who really cares. And that was my takeaway from the disaster this week, is I'm only as strong as the people who are behind me every day. And together we're making it happen. It's not me, it's not I, it's Hair Studio Artists with an S and my team. And I love all of those people.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And again, like I said, I'm sorry that it had to be under those circumstances, but sometimes we need those moments to be able to really appreciate what we have, and for your team to appreciate the environment that you've created for them to be successful. Yeah. So you guys, if you're interested, Eric has opportunities to be able to do in-salon programs. He'll work out all of the budget and pricing for you, dates and everything, and you can reach out to him in a couple different ways. One is if you go onto the Beauty Agent Network and you click on Eric Charles Mokotoff, you'll be able to have a direct link right to him. But Eric, go ahead and share your information of how people can find you right now.
The easiest way is just find me on Facebook through my name, Eric Charles Mokotoff, or you can go to my website, iasraw.com, iasraw.com. I'm one of those guys. I'm available 24/7. I answer people back very, very quickly. And we can put together a program at your salon at a very affordable price. You can also see me at the upcoming shows. What do we got? We got IBS in March. We just said we got some stuff cooking together, so we'll talk about that.
Yes, we're gonna look at some dates for 2019.
Yeah, and Premiere and ABCH, and I've got some independent stuff happening. And look out for some presentation skills, because that's going to be the focus of everything I do color related. I'm going to marry the two together for everybody in 2019.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks,
yeah, you are so welcome, and good luck out there with everything you got going. Let's go into fall really strong and kick some education into gear before the holidays hit.
Sounds great.
All right, perfect. And let me know, you guys, if you have any questions, you could reach me at bonnie@thebeautyagents.com, or of course find me, Bonnie Bonadeo, on Facebook, and private message me as well. Love to chat with you. Talk to everybody soon.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.